I'm Angus King, and this is part of the Veterans History Project, an interview with Maine veterans, an interview series with Maine veterans, people who have contributed so much to our country. And we're trying to get their stories on record for history, for our neighbors and friends, and for people to understand the contribution that these very special people have made to our country. Today, my guest is Gretchen Evans, who lives in Brunswick, Maine, who is an Army veteran and has a fascinating and inspiring and important story to share. Gretchen, thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Senator King. I'm happy to be here.
Uh, I should mention that Gretchen is mixed ability. She lost her hearing in an incident in Afghanistan some years ago and has been a great advocate for veterans with mixed abilities. And so if there's a slight delay in her answers, you'll understand why that is. Now, Gretchen, start out, tell me about your early life, your family background, and what led you to join the service in the first place.
Yes, sir. So I am a native Texan. I grew up in Texas, mostly in West Texas, in Abilene. My father was a World War II veteran. He didn't speak much of his military service, but when the war ended, he used his GI Bill and went to college, and then later served as a legislature in the Texas House of Representatives. My mother was a journalism student at the University of Texas, and that's where they courted. That's how they met, and that's where they courted. I have three siblings, an older sister, an older brother, and a younger brother. My brothers are still in Texas, and you cannot get them out of there. And my sister has lived all over, but is currently in South Carolina. What prompted me to join the military was my parents both became very ill with cancer and died within 6 months of each other. And I was still a minor at the time, and so was my younger brother. My oldest brother, Kurt, was in college at Texas Tech, and he came home and got guardianship of us. He had just turned 21. And so he became the parent to us. At age 18, the rule was, okay, you're an adult now and you kind of need to make your own way in the world. And I did go to college for a year. I went to Texas Tech myself and then to Austin College in Austin, where at the time my sister was in law school. But it was really difficult to work full time and to go to school and try to support myself. So I thought that I would join the military with the intentions of staying 4 years, getting the educational benefits and a skill, and then I would finish my education. And so I did just that. Now, really quick, funny story about how that I didn't really have an opinion about which branch. So I just started with the first one that I came to, and they were all in the same building. So I walked into the Marine Corps office, and the Marine behind the desk stood up at me and put his hand out and says, "Sorry, ma'am, you're too small to be in the Marine Corps." I'm a very petite woman. Okay, I was like 5'3" and not even 100 pounds. And so he was kind of scary looking. So I went next door, which was the Air Force. And I thought, okay, I'll fly airplanes. And then the recruiter said, "Sorry, you have to be 5'4." And I was getting a little discouraged, sir, to be honest with you. I went next door to the Navy. The Navy says, "We don't care how tall you are." And I was just about to sign the paperwork. And I saw a poster on the wall of a Navy person, sailor in uniform. And I said, "Are you still wearing those bell-bottom pants?" And they go, "Yes." And I go, "I can't do that. I did that in the 70s. I'm not wearing those bell-bottom pants." So my last stop was the Army. And before I even walked in there, I kind of stuck my head in and said, "Do you care how big I am?" And the Army guy said, the recruiter, he says, "No, we just care how big your bite is." So that started my career in the United States Army.
That's that's a wonderful story. And I have a couple of follow-on thoughts. One, I'm not sure you're aware of this, but Lindsey Graham, Senator Graham from South Carolina, has a similar story, although he was the older brother who took care of his younger siblings when his parents were taken at an early age. So uh, that's a important turning point in anyone's life. And Lindsey Graham, he came home and took care of
Yeah.
younger brother and sister, I believe it was. The second thing is, I have a theory about life that you can never tell the little tiny moments that will determine all the rest of your life. You know, the bell bottom, what if the poster with the bell bottom pants hadn't been there? I mean, you'd be an admiral now, or you know, who knows? But I love your story because it points up how our lives can be changed by uh, things at the time we really don't think about. Okay, so you're in the Army. You go to basic training, and this was early on in women being integrated into the active service. Tell me about that experience.
Yes, sir. So it was 1979, and just not that many years after the end of the Vietnam War. And so they had just decided, I think like the year before, to start integrating female recruits in with male recruits. And I went to Fort Leonard Wood, and excuse me, so they would take one platoon of females, which is about 30, okay, and put them with three platoons of males, which made up a company. So we were the first set of females to go to Fort Leonard Wood in a mixed recruiting company, which was interesting. And they still had not trained very many female drill sergeants to do the integrated companies. So we had male drill sergeants. And God bless them, they did the best they could, but this was new to them as well, okay, to have females. And so they were, trying to fly this plane at the same time they were building it. And we had lots of funny incidents because they just were trying to be so very careful to be respective of us, but yet
But
they
but
were
drill sergeants aren't famous for being respectful.
no, they wanted to be mean to us, but there's
Yeah.
something about this is back in the day when, they could lay your hands on you a little bit and, and make their point. Okay. And so they were reluctant to do it because, they had wives and daughters and things like this. And so, but every once in a while that, you can't subdue a drill sergeant for very long, but it was pretty funny to have them be our drill sergeants. The thing I would like to say, I think that was most important about this period in time was that these were NCOs and officers who stayed past the war in Vietnam. And they were determined to prepare us for when we went to war and not if. And that was one thing that I took away from being trained by combat veterans was that they had a very serious tenor about training us. And they were, they're the ones that would turn out the light and make sure we could put our weapons together in the dark and do it correctly. And so they were really hard on us, not knowing that I was going to be in combat later. I didn't realize how important this training really was. But looking back on it now, I would say that they were the undergirding of my successful career.
Well, that's another interesting story that suggests a story here in Brunswick. You're familiar, of course, with Joshua Chamberlain, who was the Bowdoin professor who went off and became a hero in the Civil War. Then he came back, and after being governor of Maine, he was president of Bowdoin College, and he was so imbued with the just exactly what you said, with the importance of training for conflict, and the fact that it was so hard to get started in terms of training for the Civil War. When Fort Sumter was fired on, there were only 16,000 men in the Union Army, and they had to start from scratch, and the training was a real big problem. So anyway, Chamberlain set up what you and I would call a ROTC program at Bowdoin, where everybody they had to have uniforms and they had to march and they had to train. And he had a rebellion on his hands. At one point, I think he expelled every student at Bowdoin, and they had to sort of calm things down. But that was exactly the motivation that you shared. That he had been through the war. He knew how important the training was, and he was determined that young men at Bowdoin in the 1870s were going to have that experience. Ultimately, I think he lost that battle, but very similar kind of veteran wanting to ensure the training of the troops. Now, so you enter in 79, you go to boot camp, you're at Fort Leonard Wood. What happens next?
So my MOS, my military occupational specialty, was going to be in intelligence. And originally I went to Fort Huachuca, which is in Arizona, for Intel Analyst School. And Intel Analyst analyzes other armies, people who armies or countries that we think we might be in conflict with in the future. And our goal is to learn as much as we can about our opposing force so that we can give direction to commanders to best combat them should we ever find ourselves across a battlefield from them. And I did that for about 3 years. My first assignment was in Heidelberg, Germany at United States Army Europe headquarters. And that was fabulous. And then while I was there, I was recruited to go to Counterintelligence School, which is again at Fort Huachuca. And this is, really just kind of a civilian spy, if you will. Okay, put us in civilian clothes, and then they sent us to language school. And I went to originally to language school for German, but I had already done a tour in Germany, and I was young. I think I was 21, 22 years old. And I didn't want it to be pigeonholed into serving just in Germany. So I called up the language branch and said, can I switch languages? And they said, yeah, what do you want to do? And I said, how about Italian? And so they said yes. And what really was fascinating about that was that after I finished language school for Italian, they sent me to Italy. And this is when the Red Brigade was very active. And so this was my first introduction to what we call today a terrorist group.
And you were essentially a spy. You were trained to determine intelligence. Of course, this was during the Cold War, but also the rise of these. At the time, they were left-wing terrorist groups in places like Italy. I remember the Red Brigade was quite notorious.
Yes, well, in fact, while I was there is when they captured General Dozier and held him captive for several months. And yeah, so I essentially was a spy. And, we went to tradecraft school. And, I think I was a good spy in the sense that I was very young and I looked pretty unintimidating. Okay, small, redheaded, freckles across my nose, and so I could kind of mingle in. And what the cover story was for me being in Italy, because they always provide you a reason to be there, was that I was studying abroad, and so they, technically enrolled me in a English slash Italian speaking university, and that was why I was, the reason I was there. And we had no affiliation with the military. We reported directly back to our case officer who was located in the DC area.
Were you ever tempted or recruited to move over to the CIA and do counterintelligence as a career?
Later on in my career, sir, I served with another organization who you'll know all about this because of your position in the intelligence committee is intelligence support activity, and which was based not far out of DC, which was the intel arm of Delta Force and some other organizations. So we worked hand in hand with the CIA. We actually had better capabilities of being inserted in places because we were military than maybe the CIA did in lots of instances. So they would utilize us to go places that there's I don't know, CIA guys sometimes look like CIA guys, and so that was what the whole military did was that they recruited people who didn't look like they were spies, and so yeah, we worked very closely with them, but I was never actively recruited by the CIA. No.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, a 5'3" woman with red hair and freckles sounds like the definition of a spy to me. I mean, now, was the Defense Intelligence Agency in business at that time, or was that just before that was set up as a separate arm of the Defense Department?
No, they were there. I think they might have had a different name at that point, but everything was, birthed out of World War II, the OSS, and all these little entities. I think everybody was defining how we were going to do human intelligence and signal intelligence and all the things. And as technology kept you know, becoming more than people. We have more capabilities. My career was mostly spent in human intelligence. You know, of course, I did work with the PARPO program, which is Peacetime Aerial Reconnaissance, as an intel analyst, where I can remember probably the first couple of years the SR-71 was downloading information. I would analyze it, and that was in the 80s in Heidelberg, and that was a fascinating aircraft.
Well, I can tell you that it's what one of the things we're seeing now is a kind of rebirth of human intelligence, because intelligence community got very reliant on technology and what they call signals intelligence, which is radio and those kinds of things. And everybody is sort of saying we've got to get back to human intelligence, to having people on the ground that can understand
Yeah,
what's going on.
there's nothing like eyes on, and that's what they what the beauty of human intelligence is. It's, you know, it's one thing to have a drone or whatever it is, and you're looking at something, but if you've got a person who has eyes on, and it's just that one more layer of confirmation. Yes, this is what I'm seeing. I'm standing right here. I'm looking through binoculars, whatever it is. But I know that our commanders that we reported back to, if you had a person that says, "I've got eyes on this. I got eyes on this target," it just gave them that one more level of confirmation that they needed to make a good decision.
Now, did you stay in intelligence for the remainder of your Army career, or did you move on to other responsibilities?
Yes, I went back to the Green Army, as we call it, after about 10 years of serving with this special unit. One is, you know, I needed to get back into the real Army, and second is the rank structure. So I was an EA at this time and was wanted to take first sergeant position, and then shortly after I got promoted to command sergeant major. And that rank is becomes generic, as you know. Once you make E9, it doesn't matter what your specialty is. You serve at the needs of the Army, and you really serve at the needs of commanders who take units, because a command sergeant major works directly for a commander. And when a general takes a unit, he or she gets to pick their command sergeant major. And it doesn't matter what kind of unit it is. You just go and you take care of soldiers, and that's really, you support the commander in his vision and his mission. And so the last 10 years of my career, I was a command sergeant major.
Could you analogize that to the chief operating officer of a corporation, where you have the CIO or the CEO, who is sort of the overall in charge, and then there's somebody who implements and does the work on the ground? Is that
Yeah, that's a
similar to
perfect
what you were doing?
yeah, that's a perfect analogy. So, you know, the commander has his intent and he has his missions and he gets his directions from his higher being, and then he passes it down to me and says, "Sergeant Major, go make this happen." And then I employ all the, you know, brigade and battalion commanders and their sergeant majors and first sergeants, and then that's the way it's filtered down. But I'm kind of like the cog in the wheel, and I don't work for anybody but the commander, and not even technically part of his staff. And it's a very unique role. And your main role as a command sergeant major is to be an advocate for the soldier. And that rank is the highest rank a non-commissioned officer can hold, and it's given. Orders are signed by the president, the commander in chief at the time, and that gives you a little bit of freedom to be able to go behind the door of a three-star general and shut the door and say, "Sir, would you possibly consider doing something this way?" And not have any fear of retribution, because and you're supposed to be the honest broker. And normally you're the old man or old woman, you know, that you get a general, and you may be older than he or she, but you're the wise one. You've come up through the ranks, you understand soldiers, you understand logistics, you understand all that kind of stuff. And so I loved being a command sergeant major, because felt like that's where I can make the most difference in a soldier's life.
And part of the job is to be out on the line, and morale and engagement with the soldiers that are, and that's where you got in trouble in Afghanistan.
Yes, sir. So yes, if you to be a leader, in my opinion, you have to be seen, and you have to be, you know, out there among your
Well,
troops. So
that's
that
that's the name of your book, isn't it? Didn't you write a book called Leading from the Front?
yes, sir, I did, leading from the front. And so what you're referring to is the day that, you know, I got injured, which was the day that, you know, really my my life changed significantly. That day we were,
When was this?
two,
When was this?
it was in 2006. And so, relatively, people think that was a long time into the war, but if you think about it, we had only been in Afghanistan 5 years, and we had been in Iraq 3 years, 2 years, if you will. And so, I had a unit that was about to rotate back to the United States, and we were about 60 days from rotating, which can be the most dangerous time in a deployment because the troops start thinking about going home. They're so close, and they start thinking about spouses they haven't seen and children that were born while they were gone. They start thinking about hamburgers. They start thinking about all kinds of things. And it's still a very dangerous time because you're in a dangerous place. So I was doing a morale call and I flew into a forward operating base very close to the Pakistan border. And I had just hopped out and I was shaking hands and telling the men and women that were there that, look, you got to keep your head on a swivel. We're still in a very dangerous place. We're about to go home, but all kinds of things can happen. And I wasn't there more than 10 or 15 minutes before we started taking rocket fire, and it was coming in like rain. I mean, peppering us. So protocol is you send out a quick reaction force to go and eliminate whoever it is that's firing these rockets at you. In the meantime, everybody else, to not get hit by indirect fire, gets into these igloo-shaped bunkers that are reinforced with sandbags. And so I was yelling at the troops, get in the bunkers, get in the bunkers. And then before I could get myself in a bunker, a mortar round landed to my right and detonated. And when it exploded, it threw me horizontally into one of those concrete bunkers. And it resulted in a very serious closed head wound, blew out my eardrums, peppered me with little tiny pieces of shrapnel, and then some other injuries.
And what, how long, what was your recovery? You were taken to a medevac, I assume, and did you end up at Walter Reed?
Yes, sir. So I was medevaced immediately to Bagram, and then from Bagram to Landstuhl. And I spent a week or so in Landstuhl, and then was sent back to the States. And I spent some time in Walter Reed. And this was before we had the warrior transition battalions. So those had not been established yet. So I stayed at Walter Reed until, was mobile and can move and can live independently. And then I was handed over to the Veterans Administration and received my care from the VA. And I got excellent care. And part of my rehabilitation not only was to get my skeleton right and work on my brain injury, but they also sent me to lip reading school because I had lost my hearing. And that was beneficial and helped me, tremendously. And then one of the biggest things that helped my recovery was my service dog that hears for me, alerts me to sounds, and that really gave me back my independence.
Well, one of the people that I've met with and talked to in the past who have lost their hearing have difficulty speaking, and you don't seem to have that difficulty at all. How did you manage to get your speech so clear because you can't hear what you're saying?
So part of that is a service that the VA provides. So every day there's new words that are introduced to the language. Just because we have such a fast-paced life, and if they're not spelled phonetically, then I don't know how to pronounce them correctly. So every month I can meet with a speech therapist and we work on my pronunciation because I do a lot of motivational speaking. And also I like to be able to communicate correctly. But if you listen to me for a really long time, you'll see that I've picked up a little bit of a speech impediment. But I was 46 when I was wounded. And so, I had my language was well developed. And so that was part of it. But part of it is that I do go to speech therapy quite often.
Now, how was the handoff from the military to the VA? I hear from a lot of veterans that that's a problem, and the medical records don't match up, and they aren't interoperable. And in fact, as you know, one of the great problems is veteran suicide, and the first 2 or 3 years after separation seems to be one of the most dangerous periods. Talk to me about how the handoff works, and if you think that is a problem.
Yeah, it is a problem, and I don't think that it's malicious in any way from the active duty when they do the handoff. You know, they're in the business of having troops that are deployable and are, you know, it's our fighting force. So when a military person is unable to do that, they cut that tie pretty quickly. Okay, and it can seem harsh. Like, you know, like literally one day I was command sergeant major in Afghanistan, and then the next, you know, like the active duty army really had nothing to do with me. And
Hmm.
and what I had going for me was that I was wise and I was a little bit older and I was mature. For this to happen to a 20-year-old, I think that's where the real problem, it can be devastating because they don't have the ability to advocate for themselves because they don't know the process or ask questions, and they're in an unknown ground. You know, I almost think that like a mentoring thing should happen at that point, where someone who's already gone through the process gets matched up with someone who's doing it for the first time, and they can help them along the way. But it was rocky even for me because I was devastated that I lost my career. I was hurt. I had all these injuries, and I was in a new world that I didn't know how to navigate. I didn't know anything about the VA. Okay, I'd never walked in a VA before, and all of a sudden, that's where I was getting all my care. And you know, I
Right.
wasn't a sergeant major anymore, and it was difficult, and it was depressing, and it was frightening. To try to reestablish, you know, find my new passion and purpose in life, try to get a job, try to find a place to live. Had I not had a great support system, I could have been one of the 22 for sure.
Well, what you've achieved is really amazing. Now, did you did you take advantage of that of the GI Bill? Did you end up of the post 9/11 GI Bill? Did you end up getting that college education that you started out thinking you were going to get 20 plus years before?
Yes, sir, I did. After I came back and got well enough to attend class, I went back to school and finished my bachelor's degree with the GI Bill, which was my original reason for going into the military. But I look back on it, you know, and I knew within 3 weeks of joining the military that I had found my place. I don't know if the Army found me or I found the Army, but, you know,
Hmm.
I loved almost every moment of my military career, even the really, you know, not so fun times, because when you're in that time with a bunch of other people, it doesn't quite seem so miserable.
Well, I define happiness as working hard with other people on something worthwhile.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that was exactly the experience you had.
Yes, sir. That's great way to put it. I can remember being in Afghanistan with being 120 degrees. We've got our flat jackets on. It's dusty and it's dirty and we're miserable. And I look around and everybody in my vehicle's got a smile on their face. So, you
That,
know.
that's amazing. Well, tell me a little bit about your post uh, military career. What are you doing now, and your activities with veterans and the support you're providing?
Yes, sir. So, as you said, I did write a book called Leading from the Front, and it's really about my soldiers. It's not about me. I'm just so wanted to tell the story about how brave our men and women are. You know, I think that we have the best that there is and the things they do for each other and for their country and for their home address. Since then, I am involved in lots of organizations that support veterans, No Barriers and Wounded Warrior Project and DAV and the American Legion. But the thing that I think that I'm most um, enthused about was I established a adaptive adventure racing team called Team Unbroken. And just to shortly tell you about that, the reason we called it Team Unbroken is that when people meet veterans sometimes and we have physical injuries that they can see, whether they mean to or not, they kind of size you up. And sometimes they make you feel like that you're broken. And, you know, we're not. Okay. We might have to navigate around our injuries a little bit, but we're not broken. And my belief is that my disabilities, or I like to say my mixed abilities, do not define who I am or what I can accomplish. And I've done lots of things since my injuries, run marathons, done ultras, whatever. So I formed Team Unbroken, and we petitioned to compete in the world's toughest race. And we were told no like 5 times because of our disabilities. And finally, I got on a Zoom call with Bear Grylls and Mark Burnett and said, why won't you let us compete? And he said, they told me, well, we're afraid. And I said, well, what are you afraid of? He says, we're afraid you're going to get hurt. And I laughed out loud because everybody on my team had already been hurt. I said, we've already been hurt. We've been blown up. We've been, and I said, I just want you to put us on the same playing field with everybody else and don't decide what we can and can't do based on our mixed abilities. And I said, we just want a shot at it like any other human being. And so they let Team Unbroken come and compete in the world's toughest race, along with these elite athletes. And Amazon fell in in love with Team Unbroken because of our grit and our gumption and our resilience and the fact that we were nice people. We would like give people extra equipment and our food and things like that because that's what we did on the battlefield. We for us success meant that everybody got to compete and everybody got to compete to the best of their ability and you don't leave anybody on the battlefield. We weren't in competition with these people. We were all hoping that everybody was going to compete and finish this race. So you can watch it on Amazon Prime right now. It's still airing. But what we got out of that is that when we came back and after Amazon released it, we started getting mail saying that we had changed people's lives and also people's perception about people with mixed abilities. People were writing to us and saying, I got off the couch when I saw Team Unbroken compete in the world's toughest race. And no longer will my mixed abilities define who I am or what I can accomplish. And one of our mantras is that we feel that which is within us is stronger than anything in our way. That our
Well,
moral,
well, that goes back to what the Army recruiter told you. She
yes,
said, "I don't care how tall you are. I care how big your bite is."
right. And so that's really what I'm doing now. I want our veteran population and their family members and their caregivers just to know that yes, everybody gets kicked to the curb, once in life, sometimes more than once in life. I mean, nobody goes untouched in this world, but not to let that prevent you from living your dream and your passion and your purpose in life. And really for me, the best way to get through life is to find some way to serve others.
Well, I can't let you go without asking a final question, which is I can still hear that West Texas twang a little bit. What brought you to Brunswick, Maine?
Brunswick, Maine. My husband is a Bowdoin grad. He went to undergraduate at Bowdoin. He is a Navy chaplain retired. And he told me when we married, when we're all done with all our careers, we're going to go back to Maine because he fell in love with Maine as an 18-year-old. And so we live less than a mile from the college. He volunteers with the sports. We constantly go to all their events when they're available, and so this is what brought us to Maine. It's also an outdoor mecca, which appeals to me.
Sure. Yeah, there aren't many places where you can be on the ocean and in the mountains within an hour or so in either direction. And your husband's story is similar to mine. I came here in my 20s and fell in love with the place, and here I am. I'm afraid neither you nor I nor he will ever be Mainers. We can only aspire to that, but it's really wonderful to to have an opportunity to meet with you, and I'll look forward to seeing you over at a Bowdoin game or at the grocery store or somewhere in town. But Gretchen Evans, you've given us truly inspiring story, and I want to thank you for your service initially, but also for what you're doing now for veterans and for all of us. And just thank you for hanging in there and for giving so much of yourself to your community and your country. This has been a real joy for me to have an opportunity to meet and talk with you.
Thank you, sir. And I want to thank you for your service to your country as well. And, we count on you guys up there. And just thank you for, showing up every day and giving it your best and to keeping us in mind. And, blessings to you, sir.
Thank you. Blessings to you as well. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us on Maine Veteran Voices, oral history project involving today Gretchen Evans of Maine, an inspiring story of tribulation, service, and triumph in the end. Thanks and good day from Brunswick, Maine.
Thank you, sir.